Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Parenting Lab. Okay, I love when social psychology gives us words for things that we have experienced our whole lives, but have never really known how to explain. You know, those moments when you read something online and you think, oh, wait, that's me. Or, oh, I thought I was the only one that did that. Or, oh, that explains my kids so much, or my partner, or whoever it might be. There's something incredibly freeing about realizing that there's actually a name for what you have been experiencing all along. It doesn't solve the problem, but it does help you make sense of it. And one of those ideas that has really become a part of the everyday conversation of parenting and relationships over the last decade, especially, is attachment theory. This might be something you've heard before. I know we've talked about it here on the podcast, but before we go any further, I want to do a quick refresher on attachment theory. Attachment theory is the idea that our earliest relationships shape the way we experience connection and safety and trust and closeness all throughout our lives. These relationships are generally referring to our parents, right? Those earliest relationships are usually our parents, but really it's whoever was our primary caregiver in those early years. As children, our brains are constantly asking the question, when I need someone, what happens? And the answers to that question really become a kind of blueprint for all of our future relationships. They influence how we communicate, how we handle conflict, how we seek comfort, how we respond to things like fear and doubt, success and joy. Now, for the most part, research has distilled attachment theory down to four common patterns. They're called styles of attachment. Okay? Now, the first one is secure attachment. People with secure attachment generally believe that relationships are safe. They feel comfortable both being close to people, but also being independent. And they have a trust that others are going to be there and show up when they need them to. And they can usually communicate pretty openly about what it is that they need. The next one is anxious attachment, or it's sometimes called ambivalent attachment. Okay, now someone with this type of attachment often craves closeness, but is also really afraid of losing that closeness. So they may need a lot of reassurance. They might be really sensitive to signs of rejection, or they might have a fear that people are going to pull away from them. The third one is avoidant attachment. And people with an avoidant attachment tend to value independence and self reliance. They feel uncomfortable being vulnerable or depending on other people too much emotionally. And they often cope with sorts of like stress by creating distance between themselves and other people. And the final one is disorganized attachment. And this is marked by conflict. Not necessarily in a contentious way, although that is an element of this type of attachment, but it's more internal. It's like being pulled in different directions. They might really want connection, but also have a fear of it. So, because of that, relationships can feel confusing because the desire for closeness exists right alongside this sense that closeness might actually not be safe. So, those descriptions can be incredibly helpful. And as you heard them, you might have even felt some sense of recognition, like I'm describing your experience or maybe the way you see someone else that you're close to. And that's because the language helps us understand the patterns we may not have noticed before. But here's where I want to challenge the conversation and challenge the language that we use around attachment. Because I wonder if calling them styles, attachment styles, has unintentionally sort of led us to believe that they're permanent, like they're personality traits, instead of what they actually are, which is a learned pattern of behavior. Maybe you've even used language like that before that kind of puts it into a personality trait or heard other people use that language. I know that for a long time, I even have said things like, I'm an avoidant person or I am avoidant. Okay. Not that I have an avoidant attachment style, but that somehow I am avoidant. And while I'm so grateful that understanding that part of me has brought so much clarity, it is not a part of my personality. Okay. It is not a style that I fit into or a birthright or a trait that's in my nature or in my DNA. Okay. So, what if instead of thinking about attachment as a style, we actually started thinking about it as an orientation, a direction our nervous system learned to go because of those earliest experiences. Because if we look at it that way, like it's just a direction and not something permanent, then it's something we can gradually reorient as we heal and grow and experience relationships that teach us something new. All right, I want you to think about a compass for a minute as you kind of think about what this might mean. With a compass, no matter where you are in the world, the needle is going to point north. Somehow that's just how it's calibrated. Okay. I don't understand compasses, but it's responding to forces outside of itself that are pulling it in that direction. And I think our attachment systems work in a really similar way. They're calibrated by our earliest experiences. As children, our relationships, again, with those early caregivers, teach our nervous system what we can expect from other people. So some children learn that people will be there when I need them. Others learn, I'd better handle this myself, or I have to stay close so people don't leave me, or relationships are unpredictable and unsafe. Whatever the message was, over time, those experiences create a kind of default direction, a way of orienting ourselves toward connection, conflict, trust, vulnerability, closeness. Okay. But here's the important part: just because your compass points north doesn't mean you have to walk north. You can head east, you can head west, you can go south, you can literally go anywhere that you want. The compass gives you information, but it doesn't determine your destination. And I think that's where we've gotten stuck with attachment theory. We have confused our orientation with our identity. And it's why I think the language that we use matters here. When we talk about attachment as a style, it is easy to start treating it like an identity. Because when we label ourselves, those labels start to become part of the story we tell ourselves about who we are. So, what if we change just a couple of words? Instead of saying, I'm anxiously attached, what if we learn to say, I've become oriented towards seeking reassurance? Okay. Instead of, I'm avoidant, what if we said, I'm oriented toward emotional distance? Can you feel the difference there? It doesn't have to be in those exact words, but I'm hoping that you kind of get the drift of what I'm saying here. One of them sounds like a personality trait. The other one sounds more like a pattern. One says, this is who I am. And the other one says, this is the direction my nervous system learned to face. And those are two very different things because directions can change. The thing is, it's not easy. Okay. If changing directions were as simple as just deciding to do it, we would all be in secure attachment by tomorrow. And I wish it was like that, but it's not how our nervous systems work. The directions that we learned in our childhood become deeply familiar and ingrained in us. They're the roads that we've traveled over and over again. Even when they no longer serve us, even if we know that at the end of the road, it's someplace we don't want to be, they feel predictable. They're known. We know exactly what we're going to get out of it. It's almost like hiking the same trail for years and years and years. The path is worn down, it's recognizable, and you don't even have to think about it. You just know exactly where to go. You know where the turns are, you know where the dangerous things are. You can go that path without a lot of effort. And our brains are exactly the same. We are wired for ease and repetition. We naturally return to what's familiar to us, not because it's healthy, but because it's the easiest option. And at some point, that option did help us learn to survive. So, if your earliest experiences taught you that closeness wasn't safe, your nervous system may still instinctively point you toward distance. If those experiences taught you that love was unpredictable, you might find yourself constantly looking for reassurance that people aren't going to leave. Now, those tendencies don't mean that you're broken. They just mean that your internal compass is still calibrated by the experiences from before that made sense at the time. Now, the good news is that calibration isn't permanent. One of the most hopeful things about this is that we aren't limited to the first experiences that shaped us. Because as humans, we continue to grow and we continue to learn. our brains continue changing. And we know that we can actually rewire the patterns of our brain with every healthy relationship, every safe conversation, every time we repair, every time we have a moment of self awareness, every opportunity that we have to respond differently than the way we did yesterday or this morning or 5 years ago. All of those begin to turn the compass, not all at once. It's usually just one little degree at a time. And that's why healing can feel so slow. We want dramatic change, but in reality, transformation is quiet and it's slow. It's choosing a different response, one conversation at a time, one relationship at a time, really just one moment at a time. And eventually, what used to feel unfamiliar starts to feel more natural. Your nervous system starts to trust this new direction. And to me, that's what healing is really all about. It's not becoming a different person, and it's not pretending that the past never happened, but becoming more free, have more capacity to choose where you're going instead of being pulled by where you've been. So maybe the question isn't, what's my attachment style? Maybe the better question is, which direction am I currently oriented towards? When relationships become difficult, where does my nervous system naturally point? Is it toward control? Is it distance, reassurance, trust? And then once we kind of understand that, then I think even more importantly, the most important question is that still the direction I want to keep walking? Because attachment isn't your identity and it isn't your personality. And for sure, 100%, it isn't your destiny. It's the direction your nervous system learned to face through those early relationships. And those experiences are so important. They explain so much about why and how you relate to others the way that you do, but they don't get the final word. Your story isn't defined by where your compass started pointing. It's shaped by the direction that you're choosing to go from here, from right now, in this moment. And that is really the hope of attachment theory. Not that we would become experts at labeling ourselves, but that we'd become more aware of where we're oriented, more intentional about where we're going, and much more compassionate with ourselves as we learn to walk new paths of awareness and healing and transformation, right? That is all I have for you today. It's just another small shift in perspective that will hopefully inspire you to see things just a little bit differently in your parenting, but also in all of the relationships that matter most to you. I hope that you have an amazing week. I will see you all next time, where we will continue to explore the art and science of parenting and put your parenting to the test. Take care.